Welcome to the First Right Podcast, a weekly conservative news show brought to you by Restoration of America. I'm your host, Jerry Ewalt, Chief Marketing Officer for Restoration of America. And today we are excited to have Reagan Reese, an education reporter from the Daily Caller News Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit news organization that counters the liberal left's narrative. Reagan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So, before we get started and the hot topics of the day, I want to know a little bit about you and how you got to the Daily Caller News Foundation.
Yeah, so I really had a passion for journalism since I was 16 years old and joined the school newspaper in high school. I became editor-in-chief of the school newspaper and then just fell in love with it. I had the blessing of going to Hillsdale College, where I studied rhetoric and public address and journalism. Still had that passion for journalism after my 4 years in college. So they kind of reached out to Hillsdale, asked if there were any journalists who wanted or were looking for a job. And so I applied. And the Daily Caller had been on my radar for a while. I had talked about wanting to work for them back in when I was a sophomore in college. So it's really a dream getting to work for them. And that's how I really ended up there.
No, that's fantastic. We love Hillsdale College here at Restoration of America. We have a partnership with them for teaching a lot of the Constitution classes, and so we're very excited. But that's quite an honor, right? So you get they call up Hillsdale, the Daily Caller, and you come to mind, and you get the job, and that's quite exciting.
Yeah, it was really special. I mean, Hillsdale's a small school. There weren't a ton of journalism students, and there were a couple of us looking for a job. And so I was looking at other things. And then when I saw my journalism professor had forwarded me the application, I was kind of like, okay, I'll put my name in the hat and see if they'll take me. And then went through a couple interviews, and then, yeah.
Well, your energy is contagious. It's like jumping off the screen at me right now, which I love it. So that's great. So I'm sure they were Daily Caller was excited to have you, and now you're just getting into it. I was looking through some of your articles. You've written a lot for them, but I think before we get into some of those topics, it's interesting to see how much the media today covers for the left, covers for incompetent politicians or leaders. And they really act as a shield. And it's shocking to see that, because there was a time when young reporters such as yourself would really do the opposite. They were holding our elected officials accountable. Now, I know you do that, but we don't see that too often anymore. What happened?
That's a good question. I wish we could know, what was going on exactly in their brains. I'm not sure if I exactly have the answer. I'm only 22, but I do know that I think there's something in it for them. That could be my only guess of why they would be shielding for the left. There must be some reward at the end, something, whether it's just internally or maybe it's something financially. But there's definitely journalists out there, conservative journalists, who are not shielding for politicians, who are trying to hold politicians and our government accountable. So I can't speak to that. I do know that there are journalists out there who are still pursuing the right thing and pursuing truth.
So what makes you different, Reagan? Why is it that you kind of shunned all of that direction that it's going in and saying, no, I'm going to stand up for truth and justice?
A lot of it, I think, comes from my upbringing with my parents. They definitely, having a Christian faith, I think, is important, and wanting to pursue kind of something higher, to looking past something that somebody is just kind of putting in your face. And definitely my education at Hillsdale. They kind of taught us to critically think, to think for ourselves, to be skeptical of different things that have been put in front of you, and to look deeper into it and just make sure you're seeing the whole picture. I think that's a lot of where that comes from. But there are other journalists who didn't go to Hillsdale College who also do the same thing. And I think that comes from just reading and writing and educating yourself.
So it's not just Hillsdale, but no, I'm kidding, of course. A great institution. But it sounds like your family and God is encouraging you and giving you that strength to stand against that current that we're all seeing right now to stand up for truth and what's right.
And a love for the country as well, and wanting to
Yeah.
look and do the best thing and for the country. I think that is a big driving factor in my everyday life in journalism, is just loving the country and wanting to better it every day.
I also understand you were an athlete in college too, so I have to imagine that that fire to win is also part of what you've carried forward with you.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps there as well, being competitive and also just kind of wanting to pursue something relentlessly. I feel like I pursued a softball career for 13, 14 years of my life. And now I have all of this extra energy that's not being used on the softball field that I can channel into journalism. That definitely helps. Also, just, having a routine and getting used to getting up early. That hasn't been a problem for me. Journalists have to wake up early. We were waking up even earlier for softball practice.
You don't need much coffee or caffeine, do you?
Uh, no, I've never really. Some people have always said like, I really don't. I can run on my own energy for sure.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's get into some of the topics that you've been covering. And one of the big ones that is near and dear to my heart is the school boards. And I guess you're young enough to know what it was like when you were going through high school. And Hillsdale, very conservative, so maybe, we don't have to worry about that. But going through high school and seeing what you're seeing now at the school board level, what are you shocked? I mean, did you see it happening when you were in high school? Tell me what's going on there from your perspective.
One thing that I'm blessed with as a journalist for a national outlet is that I get to examine kind of national trends. So I maybe grew up a little bit in a bubble where it's different things that I'm seeing in school districts with transgender policies, critical race theory policies, were not ever seen in my high school. But those are widespread trends across the country. And I do think it's going on more than Americans actually think that it is. I report on them fairly often, of schools that are implementing policies that would hide a student's transition from their parents. And then there's also kids who are in support of these policies because they don't understand the weight of the policies. They don't understand that parents have more rights to their child than the school or the state does. So I'm not sure if I'm necessarily shocked or if I'm just eye-opening and doing journalism and researching different things. But that's definitely what we're seeing, is these transgender policies seem to be what's kind of taken a hold of school boards this year, and trying to hide these gender transitions from parents.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I'm shocked, right? As a father of four, busy with career, with family, things like that. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know what was going on, and it was actually COVID that woke me up. That's when I started attending school board meetings, speaking, and it was shocking to see the way that the kids were being treated with COVID and the damage being done. And then just when you think it's over, it moves into this whole transgender ideology and this movement to this leftist Marxist education system that says a parent doesn't have the same rights as the school. The state knows better of what the kids should learn, and you correctly pointed that out. That is not true. As a parent, we have the right to understand what our kids are being taught, and the right to understand that, and the right to say no. And you seeing this a lot. So tell me some of the stuff that you're seeing happening in the school boards. Are people waking up?
Well, there was a wake up in 2020, like you said, COVID, when kids were online. They started to see what their kids were being taught because they were more directly involved in their students' education. There was transparency, really, when kids went home and had to do remote learning. That's also when we started seeing more of like a critical race theory push, because in 2020 of the death of George Floyd. And now everyone needs to denounce that and have an anti-racism push. So you're still seeing that trickle into schools, the anti-racism push and the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion push. In school boards, yeah, there was a school board red wave, let's call it, during the midterms election, where a lot of parental rights and education candidates actually won their elections and started to take control back of these school boards and of schools. And a lot of that comes from these grassroots organizations such as Moms for Liberty, the 1776 Project, who are really putting so much time and effort into educating parents for running for the school board.
Yeah, we all saw the videos of the mama bears that came out, and you do not mess with mama bears, and
No.
they were upset, and it's amazing. So I would show up to many school boards, and it would be a lot of moms and myself, and I would just take a step back and let's just watch them go because it's very upsetting what's being taught to our kids. But I love what you're saying that we're seeing a somewhat of a red wave. Now, we as conservatives, we have to be very careful with that. I know we were very excited about the midterms and definitely had some wins, across the board, but not the wins that we were expecting. So we got to be very careful with that term red wave, and we got to stay diligent and not get too far ahead of ourselves. But there was some momentum for sure at the school board level in that area. So that's great to see.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Governor Ron DeSantis, he endorsed quite a few school board candidates, and they had great success. Moms for Liberty, I know the candidates that they endorsed, 80% of them won. So even looking at a state like that, they're really taking back control of the schools, a predominantly red state. Yeah, you do have to be careful with saying that there's a red wave, but you can definitely say maybe parental rights and education candidates for transparency are definitely winning the school board fight.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic to see that. So let's shift gears a little bit and try to understand, we want more Reagans. We want more young conservatives with a biblical worldview. How do we go there? How do we get that to happen?
It starts with faith, I really do, and I think it starts with the family unit as well. I had wonderful parents, I think, who raised me the right way, who took me to church every Sunday, but also let me explore my faith, let me explore my political views. There's definitely like-minded individuals to me at Hillsdale College, and they're graduating, and they might not be going into journalism, might not be going into politics, but that's okay. Because you need people who are grounded in the right things, in Western tradition, in Christian faith, all over the country and in different professions to kind of spread the good news and spread what they believe in and talk to different people.
Yeah, last time I checked, we are a Christian nation. I mean, we got more than 85% of the population claim to be Christian. Now, you can argue, do they really understand their faith, or is it more of a cultural tradition? I get those arguments. But the truth is there, and but it's hard for people your age to be able to discern the truth, to be able to critically think, like you've been talking about. So where do you go to get some of your news, right? Where do you get the news from?
I get the news from everywhere. I'm trying to read everything in the morning, but that comes from my job. So there are points in the day where I try to take a step back and think, okay, if I wasn't in journalism, where would I be getting my news? And that's very helpful. I have 3 roommates who are about my age in Washington, and they get their news from Twitter. TikTok is a huge platform, and you have to be careful with that because there are all types of people on TikTok, but a lot of it's coming from social media, and it could just be a quick hit, a post that they see while they're quick scrolling through their Instagram feed. But I do think that's where kids aren't really watching TV anymore. That's where they're getting their news, social media.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge, right? Because when you look at for TikTok, what are these 60-second videos at most? You look at Twitter, you're limited to how many characters you can put into a tweet. So you're getting all this news rapid fire. Who has the time to double check facts, to look up things, to think critically? It's very, very difficult, right? And we all know how addicting the phones are. You're seeing something pop up, you got a text, you got a tweet, whatever it is, you're constantly looking at your phone. It's hard to have a conversation like you and I are doing that. So and maybe the answer's not there yet, but how do we get people to start thinking critically, put down the phones, stop looking at Twitter? Again, maybe this is impossible for the youth of our country, and maybe that's where we have to meet them there. But how do we get them to dig deeper as opposed to these quick, 60-second videos or very short blurbs about something and taking that as fact.
I mean, unless we're going to individually go to everybody's phone and control their screen time and how much they use every app, I don't think if there's maybe a way to get them to put down the phone besides telling them to pick up a book and read. But like you said, it might be meeting them in the middle and kind of utilizing social media platforms and getting content out there. I think that's one thing the Daily Caller is very good at, is meeting young people in the middle and going to social media and having a strong social media presence to present them with news and videos, things that are engaging, that they want to spend their time to read, that's the first account that they quick go to when they're opening up their phone and have a minute.
Yeah. No, you're right. We can't, that's a big problem that the conservatives have had, right? Where they go, well, I don't like TikTok. I don't like Twitter. I don't like the way that people vote. So I'm not going to vote that way. I'm going to vote this way where I have to be in person all the time. So you see a lot of these things, but that's not the rules. That's not where people are at, right? If it's on Twitter or TikTok or whatever it is. And so you could say, I'm going to ignore that because I don't like it, but that's where people are. And so you have to find a way to meet them in the middle. And I think that's the challenge for all of us. And obviously you broke through, and we're excited about that. But it also gives us hope that more and more people will break through to do that as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's always hope. You can't lose hope, and you have to be optimistic that that there are going to be more people breaking through. We might just not have seen it yet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So Reagan, help us understand, some of the positive things that we're seeing. I mean, we talked about the school boards and how maybe some of that is swinging more on the conservative side. Are there other areas that we're starting to gain ground back from these Marxist, leftist liberals?
Well, education is what I predominantly focus on. And I am very hopeful in what I'm seeing, not just in school boards, but also just parents taking action against the school, taking action with school choice. School choice is another thing that's really picking up steam across the country. And that's going to give the power back to parents and going to take power away from these schools in controlling students' education. That's definitely an area where there is positive gain. I do think that is something that we should focus on, is school choice. Well, I don't think it, but I think that's where politicians are definitely focusing on to give power back to parents. And parents just in general, those are definitely strong fighters, whether they're in the school board or not. I went down to the Loudoun County School Board meeting, and parents are demanding answers and accountability from their school board. And you can't underestimate how the parents push back on administration.
It's truly amazing how much kids are being attacked, right? I mean, if they even survive the womb, right, it's very difficult, right? They're under attack on gender ideology, critical race theory, all the things that you talked about. So it's encouraging to see that parents are waking up, getting more involved, and willing to do something about it. We're changing the school board level, and you're right. This is our future, right? So if we don't do this now, if we don't spend a lot of attention in this area at the kids, protecting kids, we have no future. And so it's encouraging to see some of that starting to turn around.
Yeah, no, it definitely is encouraging for people who want transparency and want more rights in their child's education. They're able to push back and they're able to see change. And that's kind of how America's built, right? And that you can go and take action and see the change that you want to see. And that's what parents are doing.
Yeah. No, I love that. Well, Reagan, this has been great. We're so grateful to be able to have you on. Keep up the good fight. Find more like you. We need more people like you. And may God continue to bless you on your journey.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting conservative media. Don't ever forget that by working together and staying diligent, we conservatives can bring our country back to true greatness. Until next week, all of us at Restoration of America want to wish you a blessed and prosperous new year.
First Right, a new kind of news summary without the liberal slant. Every morning, in your inbox, always free. Subscribe by texting First Right to 30161. That's First Right, all caps, one word, to 30161.